Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Cheri and today is Tip for Tuesday, and it is also National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day. So I'm here to give you a few tips on how to bake the perfect chocolate chip cookie. But before I get started, if this is your first time here, you love food, fun, cookies, tips and tricks for your kitchen, go ahead, hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell and check below for details on how subscribing helps to feed the hungry. So I have made probably thousands of batches of cookies over the course of years. My husband and I have been together for almost 25 years. And the one thing I have found throughout those 25 years is he prefers store-bought cookies. And I still to this day cannot figure out why. He loves my cookies, or so he says when I make them. I'll make a batch of cookies and he'll say, oh, this is just the way I love a cookie. You know, whether it's thin and crispy or it's chewy or whatever it may be, but he never finishes the whole batch. Where if he buys Chips Ahoy or Oreos, or even a cheap Aldi brand, it doesn't matter. He always finishes the package. So over the years, I have tried to figure out what is the trick to get him to eat the whole batch. I don't know, maybe he just gets, maybe they're really rich and he can only eat so many of them. I really don't know. And the other thing that I've really noticed is not so much with my husband, but just everyone in general is somebody, you know, some people really like a really thick and chewy cookie and some people really like a thin and crispy cookie. So it just depends on what you like as to what you're going to consider the perfect cookie to be. So over all the years and all the times I've made cookies, I've noticed there are several things that really will impact a cookie on texture and taste and that sort of thing. So the four things that I think really make a big difference is butter versus shortening, brown sugar versus white, baking soda versus baking powder, and regular flour versus cake flour. And of course, there is a lot of things that go into making a cookie. So there's like a whole science behind this. There are more things that will affect it than just this, but I think these things make the biggest difference. So butter versus shortening. So if you like a cookie that really spreads out, you are going to want to use butter. If you want a cookie that kind of stays more compact, that's a little bit chewier, you're going to want to use shortening. So both of these things, they melt at different points, they smoke at different points, and so they react differently in the cookies. Now, I like the way the shortening reacts better than I do the butter, but I love the flavor of butter. So what I usually do is I do a mix. I do half and half. So if it calls for all shortening, I will usually use half butter and half shortening. If it calls for all butter, I'm still probably going to use half shortening and half butter in the same amounts that the recipe calls for. So the other difference that it can make, though, is your butter if you cream it versus if you put it in there melted. So if you put it in there melted, you're going to get a chewier cookie. And if you put it in there creamed, you're going to get more of a cakey cookie. So again, I prefer butter. Or butter flavored Crisco. And I think that was one of the reasons, like you always seen when they had the butter flavored Crisco, if I remember, it always had a chocolate chip cookie recipe on there and maybe even had a picture of cookies on there. And I think that was why, because the shortening, you know, typically reacts better, I think, in a cookie, but the butter tastes so much better. So that is also an option. So brown sugar versus white sugar. So thin and crispy and thick and chewy. So I like a thick and chewy cookie, so I usually would opt for brown sugar. But usually what I do is I do a mix of these two. So if it calls for like 2 cups of sugar, what I would do is 1.5 cups of brown sugar and like 1/2 cup of the white sugar. Sometimes I'll use all brown sugar though. Matter of fact, tomorrow we're going to be making some root beer float cookies, and they are all brown sugar. So definitely want to stay tuned and check that out. The next thing is baking soda. I'm stuck on sugar, brown sugar. Baking soda versus baking powder. Baking soda, I like to use the baking soda. I like to have like a coarse, kind of crumbly, it has like the cracks in it. That is what you're going to get with baking soda versus baking powder. You're going to get more of a smooth cookie. And then lastly, we have our flour. So we have all-purpose flour and we have cake flour. So, or if you use a bread flour, you are going to have a chewier cookie, and if you use a cake flour, you're going to have a softer cookie. So I usually just use what I have on hand. I don't know that this makes that much of a difference as I think that these items over here do. And of course, there's other things that come into play, such as the temperature of the cookie, the temperature of the oven, egg yolk versus egg white. Well, I think the eggs come perfect. They're like half and half. So I just use the whole darn egg. That's what I put in there. And then the other thing I think that kind of makes a difference, just like it does in any other recipe, is a lot of times if you let something sit, it becomes better. You know, either it sets up or the flavors meld together. So if you make a cookie dough and you sit it in the fridge over the night, chances are the next day when you make cookies, they're going to be that much better. So I hope these tips help you make the perfect cookie, and I thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.